Good day. I am Shakil Hills, and this is my final year project on the lean management in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. The outline of my project has the background of the study, the problem statement, the objectives, its project scope, its literature review, methodology, some findings and analysis, recommendations, and conclusion. The background to the study: the Ministry of Energy generates a significant amount of income for the country. One of the major revenue streams by the ministry is obtained through the petroleum impost payments. This payment process can be delayed due to late submissions of production reports by these impost companies or any technical issues at the office. One way of improving these performances is through the application of lean techniques and lean principles. Lean is used because the work area needs to be completely cleansed of any wasteful processes before any improvement methods can be implemented. The problem statement states that late payments from petroleum impost companies result in late payment of the administrative expenses at the MEI, which prevents the proper functioning of the ministry and its staff. Based on this, it can be stated that there are existing wastes within the processing of petroleum imports. Therefore, there isn't a consistent flow when conducting the petroleum imports. The objectives of the study are to model the flow process of the payment of petroleum imports at the Ministry of Energy, to produce a current value stream map that would display the elements as well as departments involved in petroleum import payments, to compile a list of the challenges or wastes present in the value stream map and indicate the areas needed for improvement, to facilitate these improvements without creating new problems at other levels as a result of changes in one area, and to validate the study with senior officials at the Ministry of Energy. The scope of this project is to develop a comprehensive foundation of the structure for petroleum imports at the ministry. Disruptions in the process flow will be recognized and recommendations for improvement are to be made accordingly. This study will be limited to investigation and would not include implementation. Investigations would include gathering data through direct observation, interviews, and questionnaires. To add, models will be sketched in accordance with the data obtained to provide a depiction of the process and its layout. For the literature review, we have the implementation of lean tools into a government organization can significantly enhance the effectiveness and performance of administrative processes in a short period of time. The objective of lean incorporation was found to be the elimination of as much waste as possible in an organization so that a smooth workflow can be produced for its staff. Pioneers of lean management identified 8 wastes, namely, they are overproduction, waiting, transportation, complexity, excess inventory, excess motion, defects, and unused employee creativity. A myriad of other literature reveal that lean techniques such as value stream mapping, Lean Six Sigma, visual representation, time function mapping can be utilized to improve administrative processes and performance at a ministry. Diagrams such as Pareto chart and Ishikawa diagram were also used. With our methodology, we had our methods used to interact with our specific objectives. For our first objective, we used direct observation, interviews, flowcharts, and process workflows, Gemba work checklists. For our second objective, we used value stream map, direct observation, time study analysis, and time function chart. For our third objective, we use time function chart, Lean Six Sigma, Pareto chart, cause and effect diagram, and direct observation. For our fourth objective, we use interviews, questionnaires, and applied A3 thinking. And our fifth objective, we had a scheduled feedback session. In this section, a detailed account of the data obtained through direct observation, interviews, questionnaires, and Gemba walk checklists were analyzed using Lean Six Sigma, cause and effect diagram, time study analysis, the value stream map, and value stream map. With these findings, multiple waste within the process of petroleum imports at the MEI were able to be identified. Here we have our Pareto chart. The Pareto chart would indicate the frequency of defects as well as their cumulative impact that they have. Here we can see that communication has a high frequency as well as a high cumulative impact towards our problem. So our major observation here would be that communication is the major factor that aids in the petroleum imports late payments. This is based on the information that was gathered from questionnaires and interviews from the employees in the petroleum imports process. Here we have the flow process of the petroleum imports payment. We have the start of the process right down to where all the payments are made. The color code indicates the senior officers that are in charge of those particular areas of the process. Here we can see we have some back and front, from the legal notice, back to our Auditor General's report, back to the CPC. Here we have our current time function chart for the petroleum imports where the waiting periods are observed. Here we have the details for the waiting times that was obtained in our previous current time function chart. Here we can see that the highest waiting time per hour comes from the data verification response letters to resolve discrepancies. This is because of errors with the oil and gas verifications that would occur, as well as lack of communication with some of the petroleum imports companies. This pie chart illustrates the comparison where it is observed that the waiting period for data verification response letters to resolve discrepancies contributes to the most of the problem. Here we have our cause and effect diagram where each area was broken down to get the root cause of the problem that is occurring, which is the late payment of administrative fees. From this, we can see that the major problem is in fact the discrepancies between the MEI and the petroleum imports companies. And here we have the reasons as to they are not constantly following up with the companies take too long to confirm, no action taken by the companies until they receive original letters, their communication is very poor, and corrections made by the companies is sent only via email. Here we have our current state value stream map for the petroleum imports, where we can see the DRM, downstream and retail marketing division, is in connection with all the entities as well as the processes that are taking place in the petroleum imports. So therefore, this makes them like literally the head of the petroleum imports payments. Here we can see that we have our total lead time as 524 hours, as well as our total value added time for the process as 582 hours. In order to resolve all these discrepancies, as well as to create a more modified and waste-free future state maps, we have several recommendations. The following recommendations are used to create the proposed layouts for the future time function map and the future value stream map. We have to implement an electronic Excel spreadsheet, the implementation of an Excel file calculator, an unofficial confirmation by companies, which is very important to help with the discrepancies between MEAI and the petroleum import companies. We have the revenue officer too can visit accounts 2 days in advance so that he or she would be in sync to receive the books and start on their calculations right after. So that will be eliminating any delay. Implementation of a MySQL database, particularly for the DRM section, so that they can always be in contact with all the entities that are taking place within the petroleum imports payment. A restructure of the accounts department where the employees can have more room to move ergonomically should be arranged, as well as more well-trained staff for the Auditor General Department. Here we have our future time function chart for the petroleum imports, where the majority of the waiting periods are eliminated if these recommendations are implemented. Here we have our future value stream map for the petroleum imports, where the wastes are eliminated once the recommendations are implemented. Here you can see we have the DRM section, which is the head of the petroleum imports, being in connection with each entity of the petroleum imports payment, which is very important. In conclusion, the future time function chart had a drop of cycle time from 1200 hours to 702 hours, which is a 41.5% decrease in the time taken for the process to complete. The value stream map portrayed a complete elimination of waste time once all the proposed recommendations are implemented. Senior heads of departments validated that the electronic Excel spreadsheet, the Excel file calculator, the unofficial confirmation by companies, the MySQL database, and the revenue officer tool visiting accounts 2 days in advance so that he or she would be in sync to receive the books and start on their calculations right after, were all feasible ideas that could be implemented. Any questions?